Will we continue to embrace truth, justice, peace, and a path to prosperity? I believe that America's best days can still be ahead, and I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution. Yeah, Wednesday morning, and welcome to the Reid Revolution. It's pretty cold out here. I'm in Northern Virginia today, in Arlington, very close to the Pentagon. And I got a couple of meetings up in this part of the state today, so I left Richmond at 5:30 this morning to try to make it on time. And still had to use the HOV lanes. God knows what that's going to cost. It was $35 to get on the HOV lane if I had entered it early and stayed on all the way through Washington, D.C. But I think maybe I'm going to get off easy with $19 or something. I don't know. Does that really help with the volume of traffic that much, or just make a lot of money for somebody? I need to do a little.
Well, folks, I think that we may have lost John's signal in Northern Virginia. Welcome to the show. We had to start a little early today because of John's schedule. We're trying to get him back on the feed here. Something that we were going to talk about this morning is this subject, this ongoing subject in the state here in Virginia of gerrymandering. And in the last week or so, we've had the pickup of some ads that have come up about this subject. Both sides of the issue, people saying, oh, we need to have fair elections, as if somehow the elections that we have aren't already fair, as if we didn't have the gerrymandering rules worked out as usual every 10 years when we did these workarounds again in 2020. Yeah, this happens every 10 years. We draw the lines, we decide, okay, this is fair, and this is what it should be. And we did it in 2010. We did it before that in 2000. We did it in 2020. And then it's supposed to happen again, at least according to the schedule, in 2030. Of course, what interrupted all this, we had Texas say that let's see, John is saying he's back in here. I'm trying to see if we can get him. Let's see. I'm not seeing him. We're trying to figure that out. I apologize for all this, folks. All right. I don't know what's going on with John here. He says he's back in the waiting room, but I don't see any indication of that. Let me see. I'm going to try to go to break here for a minute here and see if I can't figure this out and see if we can't find John. All right, stay tuned. This might be a longer break than normal, but I'm going to try to figure this out. All right, folks, you're watching the Reid Revolution. We'll be back as soon as we can. All right, John, there we back, I think.
Yeah, gosh, I'll tell you what, this cell service thing ain't going to work for us, is it? It's just, you don't drop the cell phone, but it sure drops the signal fast when we're doing all this video, it seems.
Well, I sort of transitioned to the topic du jour of gerrymandering here just to get us going, but yeah, I got us down the road of at least talking about the ongoing subject of gerrymandering for you, but I'll excuse myself and let you go from there.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at some of the elements that are being shared with people all across the Commonwealth, trying to get them motivated to go vote no on the gerrymandering proposal. The voting starts on March the 6th. It's going to run all the way until April the 21st. That's when we'll find out whether Democrats have successfully stolen power for the Congress all across the state, basically disregarding the Constitution of Virginia and putting this thing up for a vote with the people of Virginia. After 5 years ago, 60+% of the people said they didn't want the politicians drawing the lines. Here's the first graphic that I created yesterday related to this program that I think has a message that might appeal not so much to hardcore conservatives, but let's be honest, we've got to turn out the conservatives, and then we've got to convince people who are in the middle, people who may not be paying close attention, that this is a proposal that is not in their best interest and is fundamentally unfair. And, democracy is the big word that Democrats constantly refer to. Of course, they talk about democracy, but then they want to disenfranchise 40% of the population in Virginia and make sure that they're not represented in the United States Congress. So their definition of democracy is questionable. But here's the messaging. Say yes to democracy. Of course, they're going to say yes to democracy. That's all they can talk about. They don't even know that we're in a republic. But then vote no on silencing your neighbors. Vote March 6th to April 21st. So the concept here is to try to make the middle of the road voter recognize that if you really and truly believe in democratic principles, one person, one vote, everybody gets to share their opinion, then you can't vote for a series of maps that disenfranchise almost half the state. People who may or may not agree with you on everything. So that's graphic number one. Then there are a couple of other graphics that are going around. Let's pop those up, producer Dan, if you can, for me. Here's one that may work in Southwest Virginia. Vote no, April 21st, stop the steal. Now, I have to tell you, that map doesn't really tell the story because there's so many colors, it's hard to figure out what we're talking about. Everything that's not in yellow on the left in Southwest Virginia, that's all going to be Democrat if this goes through. So basically, the Democrats are taking a 6-5 split in Virginia in the House of Representatives, and they're turning it into 10 congressional districts that will be represented by a Democrat, one congressional district that presumably will be represented by a Republican. So that map, probably, if they're going to print this up, it should probably be a map that shows everything to the right in blue and everything to the left in another color. Because if you may have a Republican congressman if you live in Southwest Virginia. If you currently are represented by a Republican in the Fighting Ninth or west of Roanoke, you may still have your vote represented by one Republican, but the other people in the state who also vote Republican, who have Jen Kiggins and Rob Whitman and John McGuire and Ben Klein as their congresspeople, they're not going to be represented in Washington. And you can draw the lines because we have data now that shows from street to street where different people live. You can draw the lines to rig the election any way you want to. Now, why is this important? Take a look at this exit poll data from 2020. In the rural areas of the state, 52% of the voters went for Donald Trump instead of Joe Biden. In 2021, when Glenn Youngkin was running, 63% of rural voters went for Glenn Youngkin instead of the Democrat Terry McAuliffe. This is why the Democrats are doing this. It's not just about the national gerrymandering and redistricting that's happening in other states. That is their talking point, that Virginia has to respond to what other states are doing to, quote unquote, keep things fair in Washington. But they're discounting the fact that there is a very real split amongst Virginia voters about which direction they want this state to go and which direction they want the United States of America to go. And it differs. If you base everything, every district has some sort of tentacle to up here in Northern Virginia, where it's largely Democrat. There are a lot of people who were federal government bureaucrats and employees. I'm not bashing them, but that's the truth. they have an affinity towards the left of the political spectrum and the Democrat Party. And you have a lot of people who have moved to Northern Virginia from the failed Democrat states of the Northeast. And they're voting to do pretty much to Virginia what ruined their own home state, both with the way they're constructing things and the tax increases and the social policies and economic policies and government policies that have collapsed good governance in a lot of the states they've left. So Democrats are playing for keeps. You got to give them credit that they're not sitting on the sidelines wondering about whether they can be fair to everybody. They're going for broke. They intend to take everything they possibly can off the table, and this is their way of doing that. So there got to be different messages for different parts of the state. Still, fundamentally, we're encouraging people to vote no on this. But, just like if you're talking to different members of your family about the same issue, you may approach it differently depending on what their sensitivities are, what their motivations are. Let's look at some of the other elements that are out there that are being shared all across the state related to gerrymandering. Producer Dan, can you put some of those up?
In 2020, 66% of Virginians voted to end partisan gerrymandering. We voted for fair maps, and both parties supported it.
We want a fair, nonpartisan commission to draw the lines.
Now, the Democrats want to shred the nonpartisan commission and rig our maps. Why? It's a power grab to create districts only one party can win. It's a power grab that takes choices away from voters. Say no to partisan gerrymandering.
It's a pretty solid ad. I think that will resonate with some open-minded people who are not hyper-partisan in Northern Virginia, and that is the margin for victory here, assuming that you can get all of the Trump voters out this special election cycle. These are the people who, quite frankly, didn't turn out in 2025, and I don't know, even if they had turned out, things were so lopsided in Northern Virginia, it would have been very difficult for a statewide win, but they certainly wouldn't have lost 13 seats in the Virginia House of Delegates if the Trump voters had turned out. And the motivation for Trump voters, and you don't necessarily want to telegraph this up here in Northern Virginia, because quite frankly, up here in Northern Virginia, he is widely despised. I mean, I find that regrettable. I don't think it's rational. I think Trump derangement syndrome is on display just about everywhere you go if you're in Northern Virginia. But if you start talking about the damage that will be done to President Trump should we lose these Republican seats in Virginia, that will really motivate the leftists to head to the polls. And quite frankly, the Democrats have done a better job of organizing themselves around the mail-in ballots that they've successfully used for the last couple of cycles since 2020. I mean, COVID, man, they played COVID perfectly for their political aspirations. One wonders, if you're really looking at 2020, how did that all happen in such perfect sequence to get rid of Donald Trump, to seize control of the federal government, and to create special rules and laws related to elections that now Republicans don't seem capable of undoing, that benefit Democrats. 45 days of voting here in Virginia, for example, which of course the courts have refused to obey the regular rules and laws that require notice and an intervening election before you have a constitutional amendment. They're punting on this. So the people of Virginia are unprotected by the laws that were passed to make sure that they were fully informed before one of these constitutional amendments is voted on. Let's take a look at another ad that was created, this one in the 5th Congressional District. Let's see what you think about the messaging here.
April 21st, a special election will be held for Virginia voters to decide who draws our political district lines. Will it be the current nonpartisan Citizen Commission, or will it be Richmond politicians with their own dark and secret political agendas, shifting lines every cycle, confusing the voters? They call this the Fair Redistricting Amendment, but it's anything but fair. Vote no on the unfair amendment on April 21st.
Authorized and paid for by the 5th Congressional District of the Virginia Republican Committee.
Yeah, the only thing that is troubling to me about that is it says the Republican Committee at the end, because any Democrat who sees that is going to do the opposite of what that ad says. But I think it's actually explains what's on the line here. I mean, it's very deliberately deceptive in the way this is being presented to the people of Virginia. Democrats know this is not fair. It's not fair when you just look at the raw numbers of people who are voting and you look at the split 10-1. I mean, who is going to make the argument that that is fair? The only way they can justify this as fair is if they nationalize the politics, which they are consistently doing. You know, if there's a problem in California, we're supposed to respond to it here in Virginia. If some drug dealer or drug addict gets killed by a police officer in Minneapolis, the streets are supposed to be filled with rioters and buildings are supposed to burn here in Virginia. They nationalize every problem, even if the problem is not a Virginia problem. And, you know, one of the things I've been telling people is that what Virginia did 5 years ago with this constitutional amendment and removing the district line drawing task from active politicians should be a model for the entire country. We shouldn't be chasing other states, whether they're controlled by Republicans and Democrats, and trying to engage in some sort of tit for tat situation. We should be talking all across the country about how Virginia fixed this problem with the assent of the Virginia voters 5 years ago to prevent the type of abuses, depending on how you look at it, that are taking place all across the country. What else you got there, Producer Dan, to reference the gerrymandering issue? So this is one of the ads that's running online right now from No Gerrymandering Virginia. Virginia's maps are already fair. Don't bring back gerrymandering. It plays on a loop. I think it will probably, at least get people's attention as they scroll through social media. But here's the problem, and I can personally testify to this. I've shared with you a number of things that are on social media. Obviously, I'm going to see those things because I monitor a lot of political websites, and it's of interest to me to cover political issues. If you're watching this program, you'll probably have at least a passing interest in national and local politics or regional politics. But most people are not paying attention. And elections now are largely won or lost by who gets the most attention. On a national race or a governor's race, there's a certain penetration that comes through in your local news, on the front page of the newspapers, in regular conversation. People could tell you that Winsome Sears was running against Abigail Spanberger last year. And of course, they knew that Donald Trump was running against Kamala Harris for president. That wasn't a problem to let people know who the two candidates were. But when you get outside of those top tier races, most people don't have a clue what's happening. They're not following it closely. And the only way you can reach them is to do a mass marketing campaign. And how do you do that? Well, digital advertising that's very expensive, and television advertising for the really low information voter that's not online, who's watching the Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy and some basketball games someplace. That's where you're going to move the needle. That's where you're going to motivate people. The Democrats have already been given $5 million for television ads, and they are exploiting that already. They're running a very effective ad that talks about voting yes on this referendum, and they're doing a good job of convincing people that this is a reasonable plan, even though it's not. And Republicans have got to recognize that no one's going to save you if you don't give money to the party to try to run ads on television, especially in areas where we have to turn out a significant Republican vote. It's disappointing to me that the national Republicans don't have a big checkbook and are not willing to spend money in Virginia. But I have to be honest with you. I think a lot of the national Republicans are very skeptical about the future of Virginia, and some of them have actually written us off. So it's up to Virginians to save Virginia if that's going to happen with this election. It is going to be really, really tough, especially since so many Democrats have been conditioned to very quickly send back their absentee ballot and use the mail system. And Republican voters don't like it and want to wait till Election Day. And then they miss Election Day. And so if this thing's decided by 1%, it could be that 1% of Republicans who say, oh, I'm going to wait till Election Day, I'm a traditionalist. Well, being a traditionalist is not helping you in this situation. And then I have to tell you, there's the skepticism, and I don't know what's true and what's not true about whether there's active cheating. I know that in my county of Henrico County and people that I've talked to all across the country, there is ballot fraud in the mail. President Jimmy Carter, not a Republican, Democrat Jimmy Carter, said that this is why you don't do mail-in ballots. When he was inspecting elections all around the world, he encouraged people not to use mail-in ballots. But his own party has rejected him now. And you have to ask yourself why. Why would you reject Jimmy Carter's advice? I think maybe it's because you want somebody to cheat on your behalf if you're not actively engaged in some sort of cheating yourself. And let's look at who we're dealing with. We've got a Speaker of the House in Virginia who's a former drug dealer who spent time in federal prison on drug offenses. You've got a group of people in Portsmouth who don't seem to be, clean and clean as a whistle in the way they conduct themselves. And you've got an attorney general right now who openly opined about murdering his political opponents and their children in order to make them change their political views. Am I really supposed to give you the benefit of the doubt? Am I supposed to trust you and assume that you're going to do things in a fair manner, by the law, by the book, treat everybody fairly? I'm sorry, I'm not willing to do that based on what I've witnessed in the last few years and the statements and the behaviors of the Democrats who are running the state of Virginia. That's not on the table anymore. It's no longer a gentleman's agreement because we're not dealing with gentle people. We're dealing with street thugs who are playing for keeps politically. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, producer Dan will rejoin us. And Jamie Franklin is with us before the end of the program. She's the speaker at the Virginia Forum, not this Friday, but next Friday, the 27th, at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. Tell you more about it. We'll talk to Jamie as we continue on this Wednesday edition of the Reid Revolution. Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm well. How about you?
Producer
I'm
Dan.
glad we got you back there.
Yeah, no
I was
kidding.
worried. I was like, oh, no, not again.
We're flipping the segments around a little bit so that we can manage a couple of meetings that I've got.
Yeah,
up
you
here.
have a schedule to attend to today. Yeah, absolutely.
Woo, we need a filter on this camera. My skin looks rough up here. We need one of those Barbara Walters gauze things on the lens. You didn't tell me.
Yeah, she had that soft focus thing going for the last 15, 20 years of her career.
Well, I need to start it. How do we do that?
They used to make fun of that on The Daily Show with, what was her name, Beth Littleford. They would have the soft focus with the flowers all around her for her segments and her interviews, which I thought was really funny.
You watched The Daily Show?
Back in the day, back when it was more when it was the Craig Kilborn era. But early Jon Stewart was okay before it sort of went off the rails. But yeah. And he was a William and Mary guy, so I was proud of it at first. That hey, he's a William and Mary guy who was on the show.
Well, he's a smart guy. One of the things that's so frustrating to me is that there are a lot of super smart people who are quick-witted and interesting people. But man, this just goes to show who you're around really does matter. Because I have, I guess they're former friends now. I hate to put it that way. I regret that they're former friends. but they're people who I thought were, and still do think, are really super smart, but they're just so hate-filled towards anybody who holds any kind of traditional position. I'm like, so who is right and who is wrong here? The people who hold a position that is conservative, that's kind of been the standard for centuries, or you who want to apparently upturn the tables on every element of society, and you're insistent that you're right. I mean, I think maybe a little humility would go a long way with people who are pushing either economic issues that have already been discredited all around the world, or social issues, which are real experiments, which leads us to the
Yes.
topic that I figured you and I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Dan, would you have predicted a decade ago, which is probably when I met you, right? A decade ago?
Well, we met about 25 years ago. You don't remember when we met, but I've told you this, that if it's a good thing that you don't remember when we met. Because
where were
I
we?
was
What
an
happened?
insufferable twit. Not that I'm much different now, but I was at the University of Richmond as an undergrad at the time, and we were both at an event at which Alan Keyes, the one-time presidential candidate, was speaking. And we went to Buckhead's, the only time I've ever been to Buckhead's, actually, for a dinner after the fact. My dentist at the time, the late Mike McMunn, great man, was, I think, the key sponsor of the event. But he I think, took us all out. And you were sitting at the table. You were one of the guests of honor then at the time, the anchor for the morning show on Channel 8. And I just started peppering you with questions. All the kids at Richmond, they're from the Northeast. They should call it the University of the Northeast. Nobody's from around Richmond, but I'm the one local kid, and I recognize you because I know you've been on TV for years, and I know your dad. And I just start saying stupid things like, "Oh, hey, John, Lisa Schaffner, is she stupid? Is she left?" And you're just like, I don't want to talk about this. It's like I could not have been more insufferable.
Well, that would have been an easy question to answer. Was anything but stupid.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. I could not have been more insufferable.
I don't even remember. I think I remember that dinner. Anyway.
But no, if
well,
Doc
who
Brown
would
and
have
his
thought
DeLorean,
that 10 years ago,
yeah,
we might even be contemplating the mainstreaming of cross-dressing, or on a more extreme level, transition surgery with delusional people who think if they have the surgery or they dress themselves a certain way, suddenly they actually have changed gender. Who would have thought that would become mainstream thought? And yet it appears that it has. I've been looking, I shouldn't talk about this, but I've gained so much weight during the campaign, and I'm very embarrassed by it. I hate it. It is what it is. When you're eating gas station food for 9 months, and you don't have time to work out, and you're stressed, I think this is kind of what happens. But anyway, I've been looking at those ads for tirzepatide. Is that what it is? Tirzepatide?
Okay. Yeah. There are a lot of weight loss drugs out there now.
It's an injectable.
Mostly effective.
And I used to say I would never do anything like this that was an injectable, but now I'm desperate. So I'm looking at these weight loss plans. And of course, once you Google search one of them, suddenly everything pops up on the screen for weight loss drugs. So, and they're all trying to compete for the best pricing. And then you find out the pricing isn't legit. So anyway, I'm clicking on the link, and I'm putting in my height and my weight and my age, and do you want to lose weight? Yes. Will you adjust your diet? Will you work out? Yes. And then it comes to sex assigned at birth. Every single one of these stupid damn companies has a prompt. They're asking if you're male or female, but they don't ask that now. Without exception, all of them have asked me, what is your sex assigned at birth? And I'm telling you, I close it at that point. And I'm hoping that someone's looking at the analytics and I'm not the only person who says, screw that. If you're that delusional, if you're that brainwashed with this ridiculous mindset that has taken over the medical community, I don't want your product. And I sure as hell don't trust you to be my doctor on any of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, I'm not usually at a
And God
loss for
forbid
words, but
you
yeah.
actually speak out against it. I mean,
Oh goodness.
I assume that we won't be deplatformed and banished from society for telling the truth. I mean, this isn't even debatable at this point. You are not a woman just because you put on clothes. You are not a woman just because you chop your penis and testicles off. You don't become a man because you remove your breasts. In fact, what it demonstrates is that you are mentally ill and you have found accomplices who are going to help facilitate your mental illness instead of help you. And I hope that people hear me talking about it, given my status as a openly gay guy who advocated for very controversial positions like, oh my God, gay marriage and gays in the military 25 years ago, and will say, if John Reid is willing to stand up and talk about this, and it's not like I don't have experience with it. I've had a front row seat for this, and I've watched some of my own friends become mentally ill and kill themselves over this issue. I'm just telling you, this is insanity that we're indulging in. And look at how this story is being covered, producer Dan, in Rhode Island. This hockey match where the guy, I'm sorry, I'm not going to lie to you. This is the Associated Press. A shooting during a Rhode Island youth hockey game left 3 people dead, including the shooter, and 3 more hospitalized Monday night in critical condition. An official told reporters that someone helped bring a swift end to the violent scene Monday by intervening and trying to subdue the shooter, who was at an arena to watch a family member's hockey game. The shooter died from an apparent self-inflicted gun wound, the official, noting that authorities were still investigating. Do you think maybe they've left an important part of this story out? Even if you weren't really sure what the actual deal was, there was no doubt at the very beginning that this was some sort of minimally a cross-dresser, if not a trans person, a man pretending to be a woman. I'm getting sick and tired of the national press covering up this element of the story, especially when you begin to actually look at it. You begin to see a pattern that there is a violent streak with a lot of the people who are either on these hormones or are being ginned up by social media to think that this is the modern civil rights movement equivalent to Martin Luther King's movement. I can't hear you, Dan.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
That's why I muted myself because I'm still overcoming this sickness and needed to
Gotcha.
cough. But some of our female audience members here are noting that even at the gynecologist they're asking questions about what was your sex assigned at birth. I don't have a gynecologist. You don't have a gynecologist, I guess. But that's crazy to me.
Well, that doesn't mean you're immune to it. They'll ask you the same stupid, ridiculous question when you show up. I mean, I think the question should be, what's your sex, and are you wearing a costume today? That should be the question. Are you wearing a costume that disguises your actual gender? Because that's what we're dealing with. And we are a ridiculous, stupid, foolish society if we're indulging this kind of conversation. And I'm just shocked. The medical community has bought into it. They're helping to cover up the reality. The news media, for some reason, has decided that this is not a legitimate way to cover the story. It's not. It's fake. It's deliberately obscuring an important element. Do you have the other one?
I do. Yeah. Let me show the other. Well, at least I can show you what maybe Sarah McBride and Congress had to say about all this, the image of that, and then our guest is waiting for us apparently.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But let me play this really quick, or show that at least, that this is what she, whatever this person had to say.
So this is a trans congressperson. I don't want to be disrespectful to people. I'm not looking to pick a fight with everybody, whether it's Danica Rome in the state Senate or this individual. I mean, I will tell you, I think you're crazy if you are masquerading as something that you're not, just as crazy as I would be if I was standing here with a crown on my head telling you I was the King of England. You know it's not true. And whether I put on a British accent and wear the clothes of King Charles III, you know it's not true. And see, you're being emotionally manipulated. No one who's a decent person wants to cause harm to other people. I just don't think anybody wants to cause harm. But you're being told by this trans legislator that speaking out against trans people is doing harm to real women. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not doing harm to women. It's not violence against women. It's protecting women who actually have their own set of issues and their own set of concerns, which we should take seriously, regardless of whether we're men or women. And you shouldn't be emotionally manipulated by these people. In fact, I'm puzzled why more women aren't furious to have men in dresses stealing jobs from them and lecturing the society about what's really important, as if a man actually can speak to those issues, whether you're pretending to be a woman or not.
Yeah. Well, that's a good note to end on here. I can excuse myself. We
All
can go
right.
to break and then get back with Jamie Franklin in a minute.
Let's do that. We'll be back
Okay.
on the Reid Revolution on this Wednesday morning. And we are back on this Wednesday morning. I'm John Reid, the Reid Revolution, live from Northern Virginia, from Arlington, just about a block away from the Pentagon. And I've got a bunch of meetings taking place here this morning, so I'm braving the cold weather so that I can talk to you all across the country and back in Richmond before I head into those meetings. But I'm really excited about an indoor event that you'll have an opportunity to participate in, not this Friday, but next Friday, the 27th of February at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. It is the latest edition of the Virginia Forum, an opportunity to bring in conservative, right-of-center speakers who might not normally have an opportunity to speak to a big audience and might be excluded from the traditional speakers bureaus that are out there all across the country. They all tend to skew left. Jamie Franklin is our next speaker, and Jamie is with us this morning to talk about the event and her career. And Jamie, I'm so glad to finally get a chance to talk to you. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person next Friday, the 27th. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm so excited. So I live in Virginia, but I'm originally from California. So I couldn't do the cold any longer, John, and I came back for a week. So I'm right now in California. It's early here, but it's a little bit warmer, which is nice. But I'm excited to get back to Virginia. So I'll be back soon. And I'm really excited to come and speak to the Virginia Council. I think it's going to be a great event.
Well, we're excited to have you here, and I appreciate you getting up early to join us in California. I noted when I was talking about this event a couple of days ago that you went to the University of California, Berkeley. I was at
Yes.
UCLA as a resident advisor, not as a student, when I was working for President Reagan, and we always called it UC Berkeley. Was it that crazy when you were there?
Oh, it was insane. So I was there at a really unique time. So I was there from 2016 to 2020. So it was Trump's first term, obviously. And 2 months into my time at Berkeley, President Trump was elected, and like all hell broke loose. During that time, which is kind of now come back into the cycle. I always say the left like fixates on different issues, right? And they go crazy in protest. So when I was at Cal, it was all about the immigration issue, I would say was the most part, what the protesters and students were nonstop talking about. But it was funny. I was conservative going into Berkeley, but I became more conservative coming out because I grew up very Catholic. I grew up going to Catholic school my whole life, and going to Berkeley, it just made me realize like this leftist ideology is so godless. They put the progressive movement in the place of God and the church, and it's just not a happy way to live. It's a miserable way to live. It's very anti-American. It's very anti-Christian, anti everything that we believe in and hold sacred as conservatives. And so I came out of Berkeley far more conservative, and it really inspired me to get involved in politics and work in President Trump's first administration on his campaign, and do a lot of political commentary from there.
Were you on your own at UCB? Were there any other conservative students on the campus, or were they driven off?
There was a few. I still keep in contact with a few. They have a great, at the time it was, now they have a great Turning Point USA chapter, but when I was there, they did not. I think there was an issue where they got kicked off of campus, but no, it was very lonely. And I graduated right the summer the summer of 2020. And so I lost a lot of friends through that whole BLM era that really took storm the Gen Z generation. And it just drove people mad between COVID and BLM. And so, like I said, I lost a lot of friends because the left is just not very tolerant. They're, if you don't believe in what they believe 100%, then they don't want to associate with you. It's not a tolerant or loving ideology. And I always talk about on my podcast that we want to celebrate differences. I think in America, that's what makes us a unique country, that people can come in from different backgrounds, different cultures, different beliefs, and we can come together and you can respect people's differences without having to, immediately make them like an evil person.
Yeah. Have you won any of those former friends back in the last 5 years? Were you able to get them on the phone, have a coffee, go meet them and talk through this, and maybe they've matured on some level and are more accepting, or is it still, just a complete cutoff? My friends have completely cut me off, and even when I reach out to them, the last time I reached out to one of my former best friends, a guy said, if you're going to support that monster, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And I was really surprised and hurt by it, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm glad that it's not just in my generation. It's actually crazy. We should talk about this at a separate time, but I feel like some of the older generation, the boomers, have gone even more crazy than sometimes the Gen Z, it's interesting if you look at a lot of the data now. So I've had some people reach out since and have come back into the fold, maybe people that weren't necessarily super left, or I had a student that I was really good friends with who was Jewish and really woke up to just the craziness of the anti-Semitism on the left and reached back out to me. So I've definitely had that experience. But what's really great, I live in the DC area, and I always tell people this: if you're young and wanting to get into politics, even if you're conservative, I know that DC and Northern Virginia are very liberal, but there is a great conservative community here. And so I immediately, when I moved in here, there's just such great support if you are conservative. There's so many young people working in DC who, believe what you and I do. And so I think it's a great place to move, actually, if you're looking to get into politics, obviously.
Yeah. You just got to get the map of where the speakeasies are and learn the password and the secret knock, because you can feel pretty alone up here if you don't have someone to shepherd you through that. Well, tell me about the Conservateur and this movement that you are spearheading that seems to be growing pretty dramatically.
Yeah, so I wanted to go into fashion my entire life. I was, I grew up on Devil Wears Prada and reading Vogue magazine, and a lot of men in the conservative movement, I talked to them about this because I don't think they're aware of how far left the female space is. And I think you saw in this last election in 2024, a lot of men be confused why abortion was such a big issue, and it was like a juggernaut that got all these women out to vote. And I think a lot of men were like, what is going on with a lot of the women? And you see with a lot of these ICE raids now, the ICE protests in Minneapolis, a lot of women coming out to vote. And that's because women's spaces and women's media, whether we're talking about podcasts, magazines, blogs, Instagram, social media, wherever you're at online, is very, very far left. They're pushing a very anti-male ideology. They're telling women not to get married anymore, not to have kids, to, be an AOC loving socialist, that America was built on this racist patriarchy, all of these things. And they've got them really involved in like the super far left, like trans ideology, protesting for that, the BLM, all of these different social movements really come from women's online spaces. And so I saw that, a lot of these magazines after President Trump was elected, they went so far left that I couldn't be involved in this industry any longer. I didn't belong there. And I really it was more about creating a space where a better culture to give to young women advice. And that's what I started with the Conservator, and now we're headed into the Sincerely American podcast, which takes the same topics, and we're really looking to speak to women on marriage, motherhood, faith, politics, culture, and just combat this super far left progressive ideology that runs in women's spaces.
What has been the response from the people who do find you or seek you out? And I'm assuming that that's growing. I've had a lot of people since we announced that you were coming to speak in Richmond who have said, "Oh my God, my daughter follows her and watches her podcast and subscribes to her newsletter, and these are women in my age group in their late 40s, early 50s who are aware of you too." What's the last couple of years been like as you've tried to recruit people to the movement?
So, we touched on this earlier in the podcast when my parents at the time, they did not really want me to be super politically outspoken when I was at Cal, which proved to be correct. I mean, when the Charlie Kirk, when he was assassinated, I was not that shocked because I saw what these college campuses were like, and these people are very violent. So I launched the Conservator right when I left Cal because my parents were like, "You're not doing that while you're still on campus there." They're good parents, so I'm thankful for that. But I launched it right afterwards, got so much hate, John, I can't even begin to describe to you because I didn't really have a lot of conservative circles like I have today. And so I just nonstop hate, like truly like cyberbullying that I got, where it was just nonstop comments, people that I knew were coming out against me, posting on their stories. This girl is, calling me all the typical names that they call us that are just so untrue because, I liked what you were saying, what your podcast is all about, that you're like a Reagan, conservative, and that's exactly what I am. This is nothing crazy that we're putting out here. This is just mainstream conservatism. But over the last 5 years, I just cannot tell you how amazing it's been, the community that we've built. And we're all organic. I've never had like any major corporation boost us. We're just on social media, word of mouth, that we've just put this out, and a lot of young women. Now we have over, I think across all social platforms, like over 500,000 people that follow us. And I hear all the time when I go out that these young women are like, "Thank God I finally have a place where I feel like I'm welcomed, that have good values that I can go to." And, on our podcast too, we have like an advice section where we, go through different issues that young women are facing, whether it's college, starting their career, relationships. And it's just great that these young women, I think, have a place where they have a normal advice that's given out and normal values that are given out. That are positive.
The survival of the society depends on this next generation of young women embracing at least some of the traditional roles about getting married and having a family and being a good caretaker to their family. And I would hate to see us watch 50% of the population reject that, because it's going to doom us as a culture and a society. Thank you for leading on it. Let me tell everybody where they can meet you in person, hear you in person. It's next Friday, the 27th of February, at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. You can get tickets right now at the virginiacouncil.org. There's a special President's Day sale that's running right now through this week. If you'd like to join Jamie and meet Jamie and hear her speak on her movement, it's the virginiacouncil.org. And here's a special deal that I have not mentioned on this program, but I figure I should do it today. If you are a student, a high school student or a college student, you can sign up for free tickets to attend the event next Friday. So we want you to meet Jamie. We want you to be aware of the movement that she's organizing. You got to reserve the tickets online at the virginiacouncil.org for the Virginia Forum next Friday, the 27th. Jamie Franklin, I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for getting up early in California. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in another week.
Of course. Thank you for having me, John. I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet everyone. It's going to be a great event.
All right. Have a great Wednesday. That's going to do it for us here on the Reid Revolution. I will be back in Richmond for our normal show tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on the Reid Revolution. Have a great one.